Welcome back and welcome to day 2. As a reminder, yesterday we covered the leadership approach, compensation, the revenue streams, and today we're going to cover how is it that we're going to change the world? What's the mission all about? We're also going to get into the product. And then tomorrow we'll talk about your controls. How do you control the schedule, the team, the money? How do you do all that? The day after that, we're going to get right into building your team. We'll talk about that at a high level and then drill down on day 5 so that you have your interviews coming to meet with you and join your team. And from there, after this week, you'll be running your daily team meeting, which will take about 15 minutes a day. And so let's get started on today's content. How are we going to go about changing the world? What's the mission? And what are the products and technologies that'll enable us to do that? So we are on a world-changing mission. There's actually 4 components to this. The first one is income inequality. The second part is global poverty. The third part is the climate crisis. And the fourth part of our mission is the way we help businesses step up and fight back against the big corporate machines that are slowly but surely pushing them out of business. And of course, the way we achieve the mission is through our game-changing, highly patented products and technologies, which we're going to cover today as well. Folks, this was getting better for centuries. The majority of people saw their lives improving, and then all of a sudden it took a turn for the worse, starting in the 1990s. Another way of looking at that red line is simply that today, the richest 3 Americans have more wealth than the bottom half of the entire country. That's 165 million people. If you take all of their wealth and combine it, it adds up to less than what the richest 3 have. And the top 50 people, well, they have almost all of the wealth. So what was it that happened starting in the 1990s? Well, it was the internet. It made it possible for anyone with access to a lot of money to rush and monopolize entire industries in a way that just wasn't possible before. Think about how Google monopolized the way we search for and find information. Uber and Lyft are busy monopolizing the global taxi space. How was that even possible before the internet? You've got Facebook with communications. Amazon has pushed millions of stores and shops globally out of business. And this is happening across the board in every industry you can imagine, food distribution to insurance, furniture sales, healthcare, entertainment, communications, financial services, optometry, agriculture. They're being monopolized like never before. And all the wealth from those industries are ending up in the hands of a tiny number of people, founders and major shareholders of those companies that are able to monopolize their entire space. And here's the thing, these are no longer products. They've become economies, not unlike a country where millions of people are trying to earn from within these platforms. Just think about all of the platforms that sell ads. People are buying ads because they want to drive customers to whatever it is that they make money with, right? So they're become economies. And these economies have become bigger than most countries on the planet. Just think of this fact. Facebook today has more revenue than most countries on the planet. Yes, their revenue is greater than the GDP of most countries on the planet. Google has twice as much revenue as Facebook. Amazon twice as much as Google. So they're no longer products. They become economies, and they become economies that are bigger than most countries. So when you're participating in these platforms through an app or online, you're basically part-time citizens in these different countries, if you will, these economies. Let me ask you a question. What is it that every one of these digital economies that we mentioned, that you and I can think of, what is it that they all have in common? Can you think about what it is that they all have in common with each other? Well, if you guessed they're all funded by Wall Street, you would be absolutely correct. They're all funded by Wall Street. Think about what Wall Street wants. It wants those share prices to keep going up. Well, how does that happen? Well, it happens when these companies hit the profit targets that have been set for them for that quarter by Wall Street. And so these companies have to scramble to generate revenue and save as much of that money as possible so it will be a profit, right? Remember, the definition of profit is revenue minus cost. So they have to not spend all of it or it wouldn't be a profit in order to hit that target. Of course, if they miss the target, Wall Street punishes them, right? Instantly, their share prices fall, bad things happen, maybe even the CEO gets fired, new CEO comes in and says, I'll fix the problem, I'll get those profit targets hit. And so instead of getting all of that profit, using it for expenses and whatever's left over, spreading it to all the people within these economies, they can't do that. They have to put it aside so it'll be a profit. And then next quarter, Wall Street says, attaboy or attagirl, now I want you to do even better. And so every quarter that goes by, they have to extract more and more and more profits, revenue away from all the users, so it will be a growing profit. Just think about what would happen in our country or any country in the world if every quarter the government had to collect revenues, which it does, it's called taxes, but then instead of spending all of that back on the people, if it had to put it aside and hoard it so it would have a profit. How many quarters 90 days, right? How many quarters would go by until everyone rose up in that country to bring it down, right? And now that all of these platforms have become economies, well, no one's rising up to do that, right? They're just thinking of it as just another product. But these have become the leading countries, the biggest economies in the world. And that's what's causing this red line to happen. Look, Wall Street is perfect for products and services, but it's not great for economies because economies are not meant to be profitable. They should be taking that profit and pumping it back to all their citizens to uplift their lives, and then those citizens can turn around, spend it with each other, and keep growing the economy. When you look back in history, this is not the first time this has happened. In fact, when you think back to economies prior to the internet and mobile, we always thought of a country. And countries forever were generally ruled by one person, usually a man, a king. Now, the king would generally extract taxes for the benefit of himself and his family. So as people bought and sold things to each other, the king would take a small percentage of that for himself and his family. Take a look at this big stack of money. Let's just pretend like that's the combined wealth of all the people. Well, as the money went round and round and round the economy, person A buying something from person B, who buys something from person C, etc., and the king taking a tax on each of that, guess what happens as the money goes round and round? Eventually, most of it ends up in the king's coffers. And here's the problem with that. Because the king has become so wealthy that he and his family can't possibly spend all that money becomes dormant, sitting on the sidelines of the economy, not circulating throughout it, which means people become very, very poor because what's left for them to go through the economy that they can participate in is almost nothing. And that's why that stack of money you're saying there became so small. And this was the predominant history of mankind, right? Most people were dirt poor while the wealthy elites, that top 1%, had almost all the wealth and was sitting on the sidelines. And economists call this kind of economy an extractive economy. Well, then something really interesting happened in another country. The country was the United States. And here's what happened. In the US, we went to war against our king, the King of England. And it just turns out that we won. And part of that was luck by having two massive oceans on both sides. It was really hard to send troops over. It would take 12 weeks for information to get to the other side that it needs to send troops. And then to send troops and supplies took 12 weeks. So that really allowed the American revolutionaries to win that war. And so when that happened, after that happened, all of a sudden we had no king. And so when this country started to collect taxes, it was able to spend all of it back on the people in ways that helped improve their lives. So when it spent it on roads and railways and transportation to help commerce happen, well, guess what? It went right back into the pockets of construction workers, not into the pockets of elites. When they spent it on education, it went into the pockets of normal, everyday teachers. And when it spent it on defense, into the pockets of soldiers. And so as the revenues were taxed, they went right back into the economy. And that's why economists call this a non-extractive. And this was the first time in history that we'd seen this because we just got lucky. We were able to kick out the king, right? It was a very unique situation here. And let me show you what happened. As a result of that, the United States, that had less than 1% of the world's economy, in just 1 century went from less than 1% to over a third of the entire globe's economy. This is going up against the ancient civilizations of Asia and Europe, right? And it was able to become the superpower, the largest economy in the world. And to this day, it still is. And so this amazing story has now been understood by economists, and other countries around the world are doing their best to try to become less extractive, right? And more inclusive, as they call it. Look, a group of our advisors, professors of economics at MIT, just wrote a book on the same subject. If you want to learn more, the book's on Amazon. It's called Why Nations Fail. And in fact, they just won the Nobel Prize for this work. And congratulations, by the way. Instead of reading that 700-page book, you and I just got a real good understanding of it right here. And remember what the key was to this American miracle. It was this. It was kicking out the king, right? Not letting 1% become so wealthy that all the funds are on the sidelines. When you look at today's digital economies, we think this is just history repeating itself. We think there's something wrong when one person the founder of the company, is worth $250 billion sucked out of that platform. And what do all the users of that platform get? You guessed it, absolutely nothing. This is what we've seen in history. And so something has to be done about that. Look, just a couple days ago, we saw a $300 million super yacht pour into the San Diego Bay where I live. And everyone's asking, who does this belong to? And shortly after, we found out it's the Facebook founder. Look, this doesn't even add up to a small percentage of 1% of his wealth. We think there's something wrong with her. And it's not just about what's fair or not fair. It's about this. If we don't correct that red line, our nation will fail. So how do we correct it? What's the solution? Well, remember how this problem was created. It started with digital economies. And so we need a digital economy that somehow gets built without that requirement to extract. What does that mean? Without Wall Street, right? We need a digital economy that doesn't have to keep sucking out profits every quarter. What is the biggest expense? Why do we need to raise money? Well, it's usually for payroll, to hire lots of software developers to build something like that. So we got started here and we brought in software developers and said, look, this is the problem that we're facing in our nation. Would you be willing to leave your current job and come work with us for a couple of years at least and not get paid so we don't have to raise money? And we talked to a lot of people, and little by little by little, we captured the imagination of software developers that cared, that wanted to jump in. And if they were able to financially figure out a way to do that, they did that. Over the years, over 1,000 software developers joined us for full-time work on average for a few years each, and without getting paid, so that we could build this thing and say no to billionaires like this fellow that owns Expedia and Hotels.com and other platforms. We said no to him. The Rockefellers, one of the richest families in America, gave us a couple of offers. We also respectfully declined. Let me give you one more example of a billionaire. This fellow, many consider to be the #1 tech investor in the world, the first investor in Google, the first investor in Amazon and ChatGPT, OpenAI, and hundreds of other platforms. In fact, this was his offer letter, where you can see he valued us at $180 million, which he claimed was the highest price he'd ever placed on what's called a Series A, the first professional money in. And we respectfully declined that as well. Let's get into this product that we built. So it's the brainchild of top economic professors from some of the top universities in our country. What we've created is the world's first non-extractive digital economy. I'm so glad we had an opportunity to talk about what extractive means and why it matters. And the way we're going to go to market is, first, with the look and feel of this, we want it to be a social network, right? Why is that? Because 5 billion people globally know how to use social networking. So let's start with something that looks very familiar with them. So we got the first social network that's free of Wall Street. And so what does that mean? It means profits go to our users. The profits pour into our users. Right at the top of the app, they can see their balance, and it keeps going up every day. And so all the profits go to our users. And that also means we can have the platform governed by a president that's elected by the users, just like any good democratic country, instead of put in place to take care of the shareholders' needs, which is how all corporations work, right? They're there to protect the profits of the shareholders. Here, the president is elected by the users to protect the users. Pretty cool, right? It gets better. We want this to be an economy, right? Not just a social network. So when the users earn this money, wouldn't it be cool if we had a marketplace where people could provide valuable products and services? After all, the definition of an economy is the production, distribution, and consumption of products and services. So we need a marketplace that allows people to offer valuable products and services. And so we have a revolutionary marketplace for products and services. Revolutionary how, you ask? Well, first of all, everything a seller needs is provided to them for free. For example, a storefront where they can list their products and services, education and hand-holding. Imagine a lady in Baltimore or in Kenya has a piece of land, she can grow some vegetables, but she doesn't know how to use a digital platform. We can pair her up with someone who speaks her exact language for free that can handhold her every step of the way. Anytime she gets lost or blocked, that person can help her succeed. The next thing she's going to need is transaction processing, banking, and we provide that. We'll get into our currency here in a second. And then she's also going to need customer service, not just for her, but for her customers. Especially if we're able to bring her a lot of customers, she won't be able to handle that volume of customers, which gets us to perhaps the most revolutionary part of this at all that no one else is doing, a dependable stream of thousands of customers to her storefront each month for free without her having to spend a single penny on advertising. Ain't that cool? Why are we able to do this uniquely? Because no Wall Street. Right? We're not worried about maximizing profits for the benefit of Wall Street. And why is it that these people have money to spend, that her customers? Well, it's because we're paying them for the posting and sharing within the social network, as we just saw, right? So they got money they can spend. And why is it they can spend it with a single click as opposed to putting in a credit card or PayPal or something else? Well, that's going to get us to the next part of this in just a second. But here's what's really different. Thousands of customers to each of their storefronts every month for free without them having to buy ads. Total game changer, right? Now think about this. If every transaction happening within this economy is being taxed 2 or 3% by a credit card company or debit card or PayPal, little by little by little, well, doesn't that really make them the new king, right? If I buy something from you and the credit card company takes 2% and you take that money, buy something from someone else, the credit card company again takes 2% and round, eventually most of that revenue ends up in their pockets. Do you see that? Even though it's a small percentage, because it's going round and round and round and getting taxed constantly like that, most of it ends up in their pockets. So we need our economy to be free of that level of taxation. And that's where adding our own currency is the solution. So we've got our own stable coin. It's a cryptocurrency. And by the way, everything you do with us as a leader is going to be handled in your local currency, like US dollars, not the cryptocurrency. But in the platform for the users, that's all handled with our cryptocurrency. So we have a stable coin. That means the price of the coin doesn't go up and down like crazy, like all the other ones do. And it has a growing price. So one thing we learned is that the price is going up and down like crazy. It messes with the psychology needed within an economy. But also we want the price to grow over time so people that want to buy it and get an early upside can do that. And you can see that we've got that exactly that achieved with our currency. Now, the coins that are front and center everywhere when the users are using the product, they can see that. In fact, they can even go and spend it at the local stores and restaurants. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later. And that gets us to the final big piece of this equation, which is the very first AI that can take full control of the entire user experience if he or she wants us to. Look, currently, humanity is spending over 1 trillion hours of attention in social media platforms, mostly scrolling and looking at mostly useless content. That's an incredible amount of time that's being wasted. Imagine if AI could take over that experience. If you could turn on the AI and tell it, hey, I want you to build relationships for me with people on campus, right? And if you get it to a point where this nice gal wants to go to coffee with me, great, let me know and I'll go do that. Or I want you to go look at all the content, videos, images, everything, and put aside the stuff that you think I'll be interested in. And learn, by the way, as I use this thing, learn from me as well so you get to know me really well. Or I want you to look for opportunities to make a profit. You see something for sale like an iPhone 10 that normally sells for $150, but you're seeing a current bid is $50, place a bid on there for me, right? And if I win, tell the seller not to ship it, then put it back in the marketplace and put it for sale again. And when someone buys it, turn around and tell the original person that sold it to me to ship it to them. Do all of that for me automatically and give me the profit. Isn't that cool? So everything a user can do in the social platform, the AI can do for them. And that is how we save humanity that 1 trillion hours. Get what you want out of social media and let AI take over the rest. We took this product to market with 800,000 users in our alpha phase, and now we're getting ready to push it out the beta. And let me tell you what happened in that alpha phase. We saw higher user engagement. Users were more engaged in our product than any other platform ever. And we saw higher average revenue per user than any other platform. We generated over $200 million in the alpha phase. And here's what was incredibly unique. Since we didn't have Wall Street involved, we were free to pour our profits back to our users. In essence, pay them for posting and sharing, which means they got more engaged. And that means because they were more engaged, we generated even more revenue per user, which means what? Even more profits came back to us. Again, no Wall Street, pour it back to them again. Rinse and repeat. And with each go around, the users got more engaged and the average revenue per user shot through the roof until it was night and day greater than anything else. Look, we've never seen this before in the digital space because no company has ever come together to try to build something like this without taking money from Wall Street and Silicon Valley investors, right? But we've seen this plenty in the non-digital space. If you look at Western capital countries, this is exactly what's happening, right? As opposed to the extractive models where there's a king sitting up there sucking everything out for the benefit of himself or herself and the family, right? Look, just like what happened when the first country in the world, the US, went from almost nothing to a massive share of the global economy, making it the superpower. We think the same exact thing is going to happen here. with a model, with a digital platform that can take all those profits and pour it back to its users and make its economy stronger and stronger and stronger with each go around. And that is how we attack income inequality. Let me ask you a question. Did you know that half of the world is living on less than $5 a day? And the main reason for that is because they got unlucky to be born in a geographic area where there's no strong economy. Imagine a digital economy without Wall Street that doesn't have to keep sucking out away from them and can pour all that back to them. It can help half of humanity earn over $25 a day. Not bad, right? Look, when you go from $5 or less per day to $25 a day, it gets you clean water where the water supply is separated from sewage. After all, millions of people die every year just from drinking contaminated water. You also get electricity, which not only brings you appliances like heating and air conditioning and refrigeration, but it also brings you lighting. Millions of people die every year just from breathing kerosene fumes, which they use to light the house. I hope you're getting goosebumps like I am and like we all do, knowing that we can work on something, use the experience we have, like the leadership experience that you've gained, towards something really meaningful that can change the lives of billions of people. Today, trillions of dollars are parked in the pockets of just a few people. We can change that. And that's how we're going to attack global poverty, by doing the exact same thing that we're doing. One more thing about that marketplace that we discussed. Did you know it provides all the logistics required to facilitate what we're calling everything fast and free? Imagine everyone being able to rent whatever they need, encouraging the sharing of almost everything over everyone owning one of everything. Imagine you want to go camping this weekend, and you can go to Amazon and buy some camping gear for $2,000 or $3,000, or you could pick up our app, press a couple buttons, and have camping gear delivered to you in less than an hour. You pay maybe $10 a day to use it, and 5 days later, when you're done with it, you press a button, and within an hour, someone comes and grabs it and takes it away. You didn't have to think about which one to buy. You didn't have to spend thousands of dollars. And you don't have to worry about maintenance and how to store it and where to put it. First of all, think about the logistics required. Everything from transportation. How do we make that so convenient? To collateral. What if I rent out my camping gear and someone steals it? To dispute management. What if it broke and whose fault is it really? All of that has to be figured out, and we've done it, and we've built these logistics. And what's the result for consumers? Near complete abundance. There are literally millions of products that we all have in our cupboard, storage, closet somewhere that are hardly getting used. What kinds of products you're asking? That old guitar, those tools you bought to put up that old TV, that bike collecting dust. Literally millions and millions of products stored that are not being used. So the result for consumers is near complete abundance. Anything you can think of at the press of a button. Unparalleled convenience, right? Anything you want in an hour, not even having to wait if you've got Amazon Prime to have it tomorrow or the next day. And this is why we call it everything fast and free. Everything is that abundance. Fast is an hour, and free it's virtually free, right? Think about the fact that I could have spent $2,000 or $3,000 on that camping gear. Now I'm spending $10 a day, and I'm even earning that $10 a day from all the stuff that I'm doing. Now, if you're the person that owns the camping gear, it's amazing earnings. Instead of having that camping gear sitting in your garage, 99% of its useful life, you're making $10 a day for it, hundreds of dollars a month. You might actually get out there and buy 10 more of those just to rent them out and generate some fantastic earnings for yourself. Yeah, but how does this help the planet? Well, it promotes the sharing of everything over everyone owning one of everything. And in the process, it helps to collapse the consumption of natural resources for manufacturing millions of things every day that are hardly going to get used. And in the process, it also helps collapse CO2 emissions. Look, something really bad is happening here with CO2 emissions. And by creating a near $1 trillion economy that promotes sharing instead of everybody owning one of everything, and with that one of everything spending most of its useful life in a garage or storage or cupboard somewhere, we think we can make a big, big difference. And that's how we're going to attack the climate crisis. One last thing. Did you know that small businesses are exploited by their sources of customers and revenue? I'm talking about the ad platforms, the newspapers, the TV, radio, the Googles and Facebooks of the world that are just charging them without an accountability. The banks sitting there collecting 2-3% on transactions when what they're doing these days is all electronic. It doesn't cost them a fraction of a penny. The delivery services, the Grubhubs and Uber Eats of the world that charge up to 35% of the ticket of the meal, charge the merchants that much, along with charging the consumer. That's pretty much their profit margin. And of course, they're being outwitted by better technology by big corporations like Walmart and Amazon. We're going to attack all four of those things, as you'll soon learn, and in the process, help small businesses, stores, and restaurants step up and fight back against these corporate machines that are slowly but surely pushing them out of business. So, how is it that we uniquely can have this mission that can do so much good? Well, it started with this, the world's first digital economy that's free of Wall Street. That means we don't have to collect profits constantly and put them aside just to get one or two founders to be gazillionaires and a whole bunch of Wall Street fat cats get even richer. Instead, our profits flow to our users, as you saw, to the businesses that we support, to territory owners and leaders like yourself. This all starts because we said no to Wall Street. We paid the price. It was a long process and it was hard, but we did it. We built it all without accepting a single penny from Wall Street. And that's what's uniquely setting us up to have this incredible mission. Let me give you a sampling of just some of the companies that are publicly referencing our patents in their own patent filings. Apple, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, Amazon are referencing our patents in their own filings because they're trying to stop the patent office from rejecting their patents. So they're saying, look, we know you're going to reject us because you're going to say these guys got there first, but hold on. And that's why you see our name showing up in all of their original patent filings. It just gives you a sense of how broad our inventions had to be to pull this whole thing together. Now, about 5 years ago, we checked every box of everything we wanted to achieve with our product. And so then we had to switch our focus to marketing. And then we got started on refactoring our product. What does that mean? Redoing all the code from scratch so it's ready to scale, so it's ready to handle billions of users. And now we're rolling out the beta product that's been refactored, rebuilt from scratch, and we've added AI to the original alpha product. So the beta product is launching now on college campuses, and then later this year, early next year, we're going to open it up to everyone else. Question for you: how can you access the product? Can you get in there and play with it? Let me show you how to do it. So go to the App Store or Play Store on your iOS or Android device and look for Movement Social. Now, after you find it and download it, here's what you need to do. Use any email address. It's going to ask you for your school email address, like your harvard.edu. Don't worry about that. Just use your Gmail or whatever email address you have. And then when it asks if you're currently a student or have recently been one, say yes. Okay. If you say no, it's not going to let you into the product. Say yes, and then look for the name of your college or university. That's your territory, right? If you've got one. If you don't have one, put in the name of the territory that you wish to have. Remember, there's 9 days left until you find out if you're going to get a territory. So put in the name of the top college or university near you and say that's your school, and then it should let you in from there. All right, so now you've got a pretty good sense of how it is that we have this game-changing, world-changing mission, and why it is that so many of us got so excited to give years of our lives to this project, and why we're so excited to have you here, because the impact we're going to be able to make together, leveraging your leadership experience to change the world. And so we're done with that. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about how do you control your schedule, your team, your money, so that everything's efficient and you're earning really well. We're going to set up the CRM for you, because from the next day, that's going to be the way you access the call. All kinds of good things happen through the CRM. We're going to set that up tomorrow. Do you have any questions that haven't been answered? Are you just curious to learn more and learn from other people's questions? Well, come meet us today. By us, I mean President Christine and myself. Every day, Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern, which is 2 p.m. Pacific. If you go to this URL, zoom.movement.college, you will see us there, and we'll answer your questions. And you can just sit back and listen to other people's questions in a real informal way. The topics we'll cover everything from leadership, interviews and team building, running your daily DLs, your territory if you were able to get one, revenue streams, sale value. Maybe you're interested in the product, the social app, or how we use AI, the marketplace, crypto, even your ideas or concerns with the CRM. And of course, our mission with how we attack income inequality, climate, and how we're helping small businesses. Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, zoom.movement.college. Take a quick snapshot of this page, a screenshot, and add it to your calendar so that anytime you've got questions or just curious, pop on in and we'll be there every day. And so on that note, see you tomorrow.